Looking back for a moment, you get asked this question all the time. Are there one or two decisions you made when you were Fed chairman in light of this financial crisis that you would have made differently?
Well, the major mistake that I made is, in retrospect, and indeed, unfortunately, most everybody made pretty much the same mistake, is we misjudged what economists call the negative tail of the probability distribution of risk. I know that it's pretty highfalutin and complex, but it's very critical because how you made that judgment as to what that tail was, and we had no historic evidence of what it was critical to the amount of capital required. We all acknowledged the fact that it was probably what we called a fat tail, which meant there was more risk than usually. What we didn't recognize is that it was really obese.
You embraced the tax cuts of former President Bush, George W. Bush, in 2001, with the caveat that this hinged on keeping the deficit under control. In retrospect, do you wish that you would have spoken out any louder as it became clear that that deficit was growing?
Well, I thought I did. In fact, there are all sorts of hearings. I remember conversations between Barney Frank and myself, where he was saying, in a sense, that, do I understand you essentially saying that effectively, unless the second tranche of the tax cut, which was then occurring in the context of deficits, was adjusted by pay-go, meaning financed, that you would not support it? And the answer was, I would not support it. And I didn't support it. The trouble is, there's a very selective reading of history out there. I mean, I find it unfortunate, but there are a lot of things that happened which I discussed in great detail, and it's sort of, my main concern myself is the fact is we ought to go back and look at the records. You know, for example, the Federal Reserve has been accused of being lacking in regulation of subprime mortgages. That's actually not accurate. We did everything that Congress requested us to do because we had very little discretion in the regulatory area. So the Fed is being tarred as being lax in the subprime area, where in effect we were doing everything that Congress was asking us to do.
On those tax cuts, they are due to expire at the end of this year. Should they be extended? What should Congress do?
I should say they should follow the law and let them lapse.
Meaning, what happens?
Taxes go up. The problem is, unless we start to come to grips with this long-term outlook, we're going to have major problems. I think we misunderstand the momentum of this deficit going forward. There's the argument of stimulus versus non-stimulus, in my judgment, is not a critical issue in one sense. We're going to be doing very well if we can keep the deficit to where we're now projecting it. The notion that we're somehow going to bring it in far more sharply is just utterly politically unrealistic. So it's not a question, do you have more stimulus now, or do you have basically a significant contraction in the deficit? We're going to have continued expansion in government spending and increasing debt because there's no evidence that we're closing the debt, the gap between receipts and expenditures yet. And it's going to be very tough to go up against the momentum that is currently going on.
So to those interests who say, but wait a minute, if you let these taxes go, my taxes go up, it's gonna depress growth.
Yeah, it probably will, but I think we have no choice in doing that because we have to recognize there are no solutions which are optimum. These are choices between bad and worse.